Dividing a segment into a given ratio. Let's first review a couple formulas. The midpoint formula is where you take your x-coordinates and divide by 2, and your y-coordinates divide by 2. So the midpoint, that's when you're finding the middle between two coordinates, so 2 points on the graph. Then the distance formula, so to find the distance between those 2 points. So this is all that you're given, 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2. So the distance formula would be that distance equals the square root. So now you have to subtract your x's. It doesn't matter which order you subtract them in because you're going to be squaring the difference. What does matter is you make sure that you subtract the x's, square them, and then add that to the difference in the y's squared, and then take the square root of your sum. Alright, let's look at some examples. For example 1, we have two different problems here. For the first one, for both of them, we have a midpoint and the endpoint. So for the first one, our midpoint is 6, 2, and our endpoint is 1, 3. Now I do want to start off saying that you can solve this graphically. So you can draw the points and then look to see where they go. You could also look for the patterns. You can look to see what the difference in the x-coordinates are and then add that to the midpoint, and then the difference in the y-coordinates. So the third way you could do this would be by setting up an equation. So you have lots of different options. For this one, it looks pretty easy just to kind of see what's happening to the points. So horizontally, this midpoint is 5 units away from that endpoint, which means our other endpoint will be 5 units away from horizontal units, that is, away from our midpoint. So that means the x-coordinate is going to be 11. Now again, I did that by looking at the 6 and the 1. So there's 5 units different. And then I added that 5 to the midpoint to get my other endpoint. I'm going to do the same thing for the x's. The same thing I did for the x's for the y's. So between 2 and 3, to get from this endpoint to the midpoint, I have to subtract 1. So I'm going to subtract another 1. And I get 1. So my other endpoint, the coordinates are 11, 1. Now, algebraically, if I wanted to set up an equation for that, I could find my x's and y's differently. So I know whatever my x coordinate is that I was looking for, we'll call this x and this y. I could do this 1 plus x divided by 2 and know that that's supposed to be 6. And then I would do my y's the same way. The endpoint that I have plus my mystery y, which I now know is 1, but if I didn't, divided by 2, and I know that that would need to equal 2. So then I just solve these equations, which isn't that hard to do. You just have to multiply. So 2 times 6 is 12, minus 1, you get 11. 2 times 2 is 4, minus 3, you get 1. So let's look at our other example. Here the midpoint is -1 and our endpoint is 3.5 for our x-coordinates, and then for the y-coordinates it's -2 to 7. So I'm going to solve this one algebraically. So I know that my endpoint that I have, 3.5, plus my other endpoint, x-coordinate, divided by 2, has to equal -1. Now, let me get a little bit more room here. So if we multiply 2 times -1, so multiplying both sides of the equation by 2, let me select something better there. There we go. Multiply both sides by 2. That gives us 3.5 plus x equals -2. Then I'll subtract 3.5 on both sides of my equation, and I'll get x equals -5.5. So I have my x-coordinate. Now to get my y-coordinate, I set up the same type of equation, but now with -7, because that's the y that I know. I need my endpoint, divide by 2. That's supposed to equal negative 2. So 2 times negative 2, so I'll multiply both sides of the equation by 2. So we have negative 7 plus y equals negative 4. Then add 7 on both sides so that y equals positive 3. So now I have my endpoint. And I'll write it up here. It is negative 5.53. All right, number 2. Jennifer and Jill are best friends. They placed a map of their town on a coordinate grid and found the point at which each of their houses lie. If Jennifer's house lies at 9,7 and Jane's house is at 12,8 and they want to meet in the middle, what are the coordinates of the place they should meet? Well, if they want to meet in the middle between 2 points, that means that we need to find the midpoint. So we just say 12 plus 9, so those are our x coordinates, over 2. And then we'll do our y coordinates, 8 plus 7 over 2. So 12 plus 9 is 21. 21 over 2 is 10.5. 8 plus 7 is 15. 15 over 2 is 7.5. So the coordinates where they need to meet are at 10.5, 7.5. A city map is placed on a coordinate grid. The post office is located at point A, which is 3,8. The library is located at point B, which is 15,9, and the fire station is located at point C, which is 21,95. What is the ratio of the length of AC to the length of BC? Alright, well, let's find these lengths. Let's start off with AC. So to find AC, we need the distance formula. So distance equals the square root of, we have to subtract our x's, and our y's. Okay, so when we're subtracting our x's, if we are finding first AC, then our x's are 3 and 21. So I'll do 21 minus 3 squared plus 9.5 minus 8 squared. And I'll simplify that to find that the distance, so I have a distance of 18.0624. Alright, now let's find BC. So I'll use my distance formula, the same one that I had. So our x's this time are 21 and 15. And our y's are 9.5 and 9. Alright, and go ahead and simplify that. And we get that D equals 6.0208. Alright, now if we want the ratio here of length AC to BC, so let's, if we do 18, so 18.0624 to 6.0608. So this will be an approximation, but if we round it to the whole number, then we would have 18 to 6, which would simplify to 3 to 1. So our ratio is 3 to 1. So now it's time to pause the video and complete the independent practice. When you're done with the independent practice, press play to check your answers. For number 4, in the independent practice, the first endpoint is found at 6, 17, and the second one is at negative 8.5, negative 11. For number 5, the midpoint between Jack and Jim is 5.5, 6.5. And for number 6, found the distance from AC and the length of BC, so the distance from A to C and the distance from B to C, and then comparing them, 5 to 10 simplifies to 1 to 2. So the ratio of the length of AC to the length of BC is 1 to 2.